Alright, so on this edge I'm going to go 20 down. You're going to have the line, but you don't want to use this small edge. It's too small. We can always, once you drill the holes and put them in, you can always come back and grind off whatever excess. So, I have my trusty tin snips. The last time I used my trusty knife, I cut through my finger. I don't want to do that again. At least not anytime soon. So on everything, I'm going to follow the line except for that bottom return edge. I'm going to come up here and I'm just following the line. So this stuff is very thin, very easy to bend. So I don't have to use, my hand's not going to go tired from using this, compared to some armors that I've used. Come this way. So the good thing about this armor, the guy that we're doing it for, Betsko, is very thin. He's a tiny guy. So this armor, we're not going to have to trim a lot off. The only thing we might have to trim off is we're probably going to have to trim off just a tiny bit up here because he's shorter. So instead of getting rid of this return edge and having to make a new one right in here, like the Luke A&H Hero one, we're going to come up here and cut this off. And then we're going to keep this, but we're going to probably cut off an inch, maybe 2, because he's 5'8". Most troopers are about 5'10". But we'll have to wait and actually see what it looks like on them first before we do any amount of trimming. So we're just going to trim it like you would normally trim it. And once we figure out where it needs to go, from there, then we'll trim it more. So these tin snips actually cut it and then make it where you have to do very minimal amount of cleanup. We're going to come this way, do the same thing. Plus this helps a lot around the corners, the turns like this, compared to doing it with your blade. But the only problem is when you have to go around corners, it makes this ugliness. But once he sands this down, you won't even see any of that. So keep going. So he's going to have to come up and trim just that little bit right here on the belt sander. So this armor, I actually like all this extra return. Most armors you get don't have this secondary return edge, especially right here. They don't have it here and they don't have it as much here. So I really do like that. But that's on the original. So if you were to ever get RS, it would have a lot of this return edge. So now I'm going to trim it here. So I'm not going to trim where the line is. Give it a little bit more than what it needs, and again I can always come through and trim whatever extra that's on there off. So there you go. I saved quite a bit. Now that I got that big old hunk of mass out of my way, now I can come through and actually trim it just a little bit better. Okay, so that taken off. Now you can see where their return edge is and where mine is. So if you were to measure it, it would be, hold that in right there, it would be about 10 to 15, anywhere between 10 to 15. Okay, put that back. So you want to do this, if you're doing the bracket system like we are, you're going to want to do it on the bottom of the chest, top of the ab plate, the bottom of the back, the kidney, top and bottom, and then the top of the butt plate. Everything else is just going to be just return edge. So like I said, this one, the line is right here. So because when I make the turn, it cuts kind of jagged, I went a little bit below it so he can sit there and Dremel that excess off, and you won't see any of these cut marks in here. You won't get any of that nasty cut marks. So he did finish was he took it back, so I'll go ahead and cut this while he's gone. So here you see a really huge line. Okay, so one thing I've noticed on this one and then RS is, again, there's this little edge right here. Don't cut all the way to the edge. Cut just to where the line is. You want that return edge. What's going to happen is once you put the kidney plate and this back plate, as long as you don't have to use shims, once you put those two together, I put so many kits together, it doesn't matter. Once those two come together, they're never ever going to be perfect like that. There's always going to be a gap. So it just gives you that. What this is doing is it's giving the impression that this armor is this thick instead of being this thick. So I like how they kept this part in there. So one thing I do when I cut this, and it's only me holding it, I always hold the plastic that I'm cutting because it holds the armor from moving. When you're cutting with the blade, the armor tends to move, and if you're trying to cut that straight line and the armor moves, you can end up cutting off the line. So like I said, when I first started, I'm holding onto the armor, then I just peel this back. And it helps me keep the armor from jumping around, keeping this thing straight. But I do short little cuts. I don't do the full, like the whole blade all the way down. I do real small cuts in it. Okay, so this is the bottom, the side. Now I'm going to do the return edge. So again, this is kind of thin, so I could probably do it two ways. See this extra, there's where the cut line is, there's a line right here. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if I can draw it in there. There's a line right about here. It's a little bit of a groove in there. So if you look here, you can see that groove right there. I'm going to put this down, and I'm actually going to use the blade because I can just follow that groove. Just go very slow. Again, not a lot of pressure. And all I need is 2. So there's the second one. The second one on the top here. And I'm not using a lot of pressure. So I can come here and just cut the edges. So once it's cut, I can start bending it. This is ready. Did you hit the add button? Okay. Come here, and I just bend it in, see how it creases, so I know right where the cut is. So you got to be very careful when you do it, because if you didn't cut it deep enough, the plastic will rip. So I notice it's not going right there, so I'm just going to do one more time. Hopefully, that's enough. So I'm going very slow, very meticulous, because I don't want to rip it. So there you go, nice and straight. So once he comes back, and he can sit there and do this. So we're using a belt sander. It's got 80 grit, but the sander is been using it quite a bit. So it's probably around 200, not really 80. So come on over here. So now you can see it's kind of done. Just got to clean this up a little bit. With it done, it just sits right on top, just like that. This one just sits just like that. So like I said, you want it nice and flat, so it just sits right on top of it. So right now, I'm trying to cut these, drill these rivets out. So I'm basically going very slowly because I don't want to heat up this metal. Going very slow, a little bit at a time. Just taking off a tiny bit at a time. There we go. Just like that. That rivet is out. Now the next one. Almost done with this one. Whoa! Be careful. There you go. Okay, that one's out. So now we just gotta take these out. This one we already screwed up, but again, I'm gonna use some ABS paste. The only problem I'm gonna have is I don't really have something to put in here because there's two boxes here. It's easier. I could set it up like that. So what I'm probably going to have to do, because it's already broke everywhere except for this piece right here. So I might just have to trim it right here. And then, like I said before, I'll just use some ABS paste. Because it's already cracked in there. But again, I've already taken those out. Almost there. There it is. There we go. So, I made a very big boo-boo. But again, once we take this rivet out and you put it back in, you will not even see it. So what we're going to end up doing is we have so much extra scrap here. So we're going to make a little piece that'll fill this whole area in, because we don't want it super thick because this part's going to bend. So we're going to take a small piece. We cut out a small piece. So we're going to glue in a small piece right here. We're going to flip it around. We're going to throw ABS paste, fill in this whole inside so it fills into where that piece is at. And then once it's dry, then we drill a hole in here. These will already have the holes, and then we can just put another rivet in. And that'll be that for that. So here we just need to slowly, very slowly. Some of these, if you look at it just right, you can see there's already just a tiny bit. So boom, just pops right out. So you just got to look at it, see where that little area is. Pop it up. So right now I'm just trying to fit the rivet through. There it goes. I think it's still glued in the back here, yep. Well, this one's doing the same thing right here, so we're going to have to do the same thing with this one too. You can just back it. So what I can do, give me that. So I'll just cut it right here. Okay, so it came out with the rivet because that's how they glued it in. But again, doesn't matter because it's all going to be hidden. So these are out. So now what we need to do is we're going to zap a gap, a piece in right here, a piece in right here. So we'll make it more of a, there you go. So we got a square. We're going to glue in one here, and we glue in one here. Actually, we'll go with the bigger one. We're going to glue it like that. Once it's glued in, you can put we're going to have to use very little bit. Actually, we'll glue it in first. Because this is so weak, this plastic. I don't know how the ABS paste is going to react with it, if it's going to make this melt. So once we have it in right here, we're going to put ABS in here so that this piece will connect. This piece that's broken will connect to the piece that we're gluing in. We don't really want to glue it in here, or ABS paste around here. That will make it stronger, but the only problem is I don't know if this ABS paste is going to distort. Once you put this, let me see a add button that's, yeah. So I don't know how much it'll distort around. So when you put the button on, it might be kind of warped. So we're just going to concentrate the ABS paste mostly where this hole is. Same thing with this one. Once we put it in, we're just going to concentrate where this hole is right here. Not this one, this one. We're going to glue the whole thing right here and glue this one down. We're actually going to round these off too. Okay, so you're going to do that real quick. Just pop these out, the rivets. Just be careful. Okay, so right here, what we have is ABS paste. Basically, all it is pieces of ABS. So whatever we cut off here, you cut it into little itty bitty pieces. You throw it in. I have a mason jar. That way you could tighten it on there. So I throw them in there. I fill it up about that far. But this one, because I'm going to be working on a clone, I filled it up even further. So you fill it up about halfway, and then you put acetone, and I put acetone where it's just a little bit higher, and then I seal it, and I let it sit. I let it sit overnight, then the next day I come back and I swish it around, get it all mixed together, and then what it should do is it should drip. If you put a screwdriver or whatever you're going to use to smear on there, when you pull it out, it should just drip right off. You don't want it watery, but you want it to be like a paste, like ABS paste. Yeah. So this stuff does smell. It does have acetone. So like nail polish remover.